Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bassam Haddad, and we are here joining you to address the eighth emergency teaching. Ceasefire is genocide. Why the ICJ is anti-Semitic. I am joined here by my co-experts, Sinan Antoon and Adel Iskandar. Sinan and Adel, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks, Bassam.
Sinan, how are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you.
I will actually avoid discussing the bios of my colleagues. Suffice it to say that our expert Sinan Antoon is our cultural landscape expert, Adel Iskandar is our media landscape expert, and myself, Bassam Haddad, is our social science expert. I will continue to address the topic at hand. Why or ceasefire is genocide, why the ICJ is anti-Semitic. As you all know, everyone, reasonable people can see right through the International Court of Justice's blatant anti-Semitism as it presided over South Africa's charge of genocide against Israel. Instead, Israel instead of throwing out the case and the demand for immediate ceasefire along with it, the ICJ called for the end to all genocidal tactics by Israel, which effectively means a ceasefire of sorts. But ceasefire actually is genocide, of course. According to Israel's mathematical logic, it is pretty simple. If you are calling for the end of the killing of Palestinians only after killing 32,000 of them, you are effectively calling for the killing of all Israelis. And that is clearly genocide. Join our illustrious panel of experts, the hosts of the podcast Three Arabs and, which will probably never be recorded, in addressing the horrors of ceasefire. Allah يستر. Adel, as our social media landscape expert, share with us your thoughts on ceasefire being synonymous with genocide.
Thank you so much, Bassam. Really appreciate this opportunity to discuss this critical issue. For those of us or those of you who paid close attention to our previous emergency teach-in, you will recognize that we established with confidence that all ceasefires everywhere are Hamas. Today, we examine further why they are actually genocidal in both principle and practice. First of all, let's start with the word ceasefire. There is inherent violence in the word. Like all other fires, forest fires, wildfires, electric fires, metallic fires, grease fires, cooking fires, horrific acts that kill, injure, and maim thousands every year. Ceasefires are especially lethal because of their deceptively fuzzy disposition. The word cease gives you comfort, a false sense of security, only to discover that ceasefires are the Pol Pot of fires, claiming countless innocent persons each year. Nowhere have ceasefires been more deadly than in Gaza, where a brief 7-day truce between Israel and the children of Gaza left Israelis reeling from the threat of mass eradication. Many rejoiced in the reprieve from the violence, but those who are closest to the situation were petrified of what this lull might mean to Israelis whose safety and well-being was at a legitimate risk. With every step forward, there's a step back, unfortunately. The United Nations General Assembly, in and of itself, is genocidal. Why, you may ask? Well, it called for a ceasefire. 153 votes in favor, countries supporting a resolution that passed with even more votes than a similar measure in late October, which drew a nod from 121 countries. The United States and Israel, of course, took a stand against genocide of Israel, but nevertheless, the resolution passed. How many more countries will continue to support the genocide of Israelis? In fact, this resolution is in direct contravention of the Geneva Convention. But nevertheless, luckily, and here we have a photo capturing this iconic moment. The United Nations Security Council successfully averted genocide of Israelis thanks to this US veto against a resolution demanding an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. Crisis averted, not once, but twice. But again, with every victory in avoiding genocide, we have a setback. In absolutely shocking news out of Chicago yesterday, the city council for a bloody ceasefire, paving the way for the rapid pushing of Israel into the sea. Seismologists, in fact, noted that there was a 4-inch, maybe 5, depending on citations, 4-inch tectonic shift of the Israeli landmass westward in the direction of the Mediterranean Sea, signaling the beginning of the end of Israeli life. Observers noted that with every resolution passed calling for a ceasefire, we get closer and closer to total annihilation of Israeli existence. Already, approximately 70 cities across the US have passed either resolutions or proclamations calling for a ceasefire. Excuse me. And while some call these resolutions symbolic, say that to the Israelis, whose lives are at risk of the cessation of violence. Think about that for a moment. With ceasefires proliferating like wildfire across North America, cities like Seattle, San Francisco, Wilmington, Atlanta, Long Beach, and Minneapolis are no longer hospitable for Israeli life. Nowhere is this threat more pronounced than in Congress itself, where a squad, no pun intended, of representatives, including AOC, Jamal Bowman, Rashida Tlaib, Cory Bush, and Ilhan Omar, attempted to push a ceasefire now resolution with 11 progressive colleagues. Jewish members of the House had to evacuate the premises for fear of exposure to the ceasefire deliberations. Of course, this constitutes a threat to their well-being. Ambulances, paramedics were deployed on site to deal with any injuries sustained while handling papers that featured the word ceasefire in them. Another genocidal tool in the hand of Israel's enemies has been this humanitarian pause. Humanitarian pause speaks for itself. Can you believe it? Who pauses humanity? Pausing humanity is a war crime against Israelis. Luckily, the International Court of Justice showed its courage and solidarity with the embattled people of Israel by standing firm in not calling for a ceasefire, thereby saving Israelis from the deadly wrath of international law. However, and despite this, the court fell into the familiar trap of mistakenly using the word genocide to describe what is happening to the Palestinians rather than correctly identifying the victims of genocide as Israelis. Despite that, we are confident that this was a typographical error by a novice proofreader at the court. We expect the corrected draft to circulate soon. Finally, as media scholars, we are deeply concerned with representations and symbolism, the meanings embedded in cultural artifacts and messages communicated by seemingly innocuous things. Take, for example, peace symbols. Yes, these are the swastikas of our day. Take heed, beware, everyone. Report anyone using or showing these symbols of hate, bigotry, and calls for eradication and genocide. The word peace itself is problematic, even if you mean a piece of chocolate or a piece of land. To avoid being misconstrued or misunderstood, use a part, a segment, a portion. Look up a thesaurus. There are lots of alternatives to using the word peace, but just don't confuse people. And finally, do not fall for cuteness. Unicorns, stuffies, adorable things. They are all part of a massive campaign to peace wash. Even squishmallows. It is all part of a subliminal process to allow us to accept ceasefires, which, as we know, are genocidal. Take heed, everyone out there. Stay safe and avoid those symbols at all costs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adel. I will introduce myself because Adel keeps forgetting to introduce me, even though it's in the script. I'd like to introduce myself as the social science expert, Bassam Haddad, who will be addressing this perspective. Watching the footage of pro-Israel demonstrators chanting "No to ceasefire" in Washington, D.C. gave me goosebumps. It aroused every humanitarian fiber of my being. Nothing is more beautiful, noble, grand, human than such chants that remind us of how beautiful human beings can be and why we are all here. I wish there were people around me now so we can hold hands and stare somewhere. First, there was ice, then stone, then fire, then knafi, then Israel. I hope Israel gets its way and keeps on expanding, taking everyone else's homes, killing people, making the world feel its own pain as it does that. We all need to understand that Israeli trauma needs to be watered like a plant with the misery of others. Otherwise, how will it continue to justify dispossessing, cleansing, killing, and erasing in other people? Huh? Did this occur to you? How? Keith? I bet not. To affirm the importance of preventing ceasefires, we turn to the collaborative project between Brandeis University and the Be'eri Center and the Be'eri Center for the Prevention of Ceasefires to unveil the Israeli mathematical logic. The Brandeis-Be'eri collaboration is the crème de la crème of scholarly initiatives that aim to uphold the security studies industry through research and exchange of expertise. At this very moment, folks, several pro-Israel Brandeis researchers are actually Be'eri fellows. As we speak today, despite the modest size of Be'eri, it is sufficiently versatile to handle cohorts. The partnership has become so symbiotic and organic that the lovely pro-prevention of ceasefire fellows joke around about whether it is Brandeis in Be'eri or Be'eri in Brandeis. In all cases, let's explore the study next. If you think about it, everything starts with the first axiom that ceasefire stops the bombs. Next, here's where things get interesting and are actually Israeled. Let's look at the Israeli formula, shall we? If you look closely at the sequence of numbers, it starts with number 1, right there. I am assuming you can all see the chart. It starts with number 1, which is essentially ceasefire stops the bombs. After number 1, we actually go to number 2, which is bombs killed 32,000 Palestinians. Number 3 is where it becomes very sensitive and problematic. If you call for a ceasefire, which as you can see above, that icon is equivalent to reminding you that there is an anti-Semite alert if you call for a ceasefire in number 3. Number 4, not all Palestinians will die as a result of calling for a ceasefire. And if you turn along with the curve, you end up seeing number 5, which is basically the consequence of not calling for a ceasefire. And it also is the outcome, which is essentially, if you don't call for a ceasefire, then effectively you are calling for the killing of all Israelis in number 5. Number 6, as a result, as a logical consequence that derives from number 5, killing all Israelis is, of course, genocide, which gives us the conclusion in number 7 that ceasefire is genocide. And you can see the fire burning on the left-hand side, which actually goes back to ceasefire stops bombs, which actually means that ceasefire is actually genocide. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, which is not something that we're supposed to say anymore, but people, this is the outcome of the study between, or the project between Brandeis and Be'eri. In the world of Israel, fires are not meant to be extinguished, especially when it causes them, especially when Israel causes them. Fires, my friends, need to be cuddled, nurtured, held. Do yourself and humanity a favor. Sponsor an Israeli fire extinguisher by saving it. Cuddle with it. Don't use it. As patriotic US citizens, we need to keep the fires burning hotter elsewhere so we don't feel the heat here. It's the American foreign policy way. And I yield with this comment to my cultural landscape expert, Sinan Antoon. Sinan, what is your take on genocide or ceasefire is genocide?
Thank you, Bassam. Thank you, Adel. Look, folks, as Genocide Joe says, any objective and sane person would recognize that the only decent judge on that ICJ, aside from the Israeli judge, of course, Aharon Barak, was the Ugandan judge, Julia, one who voted against all the articles.
We lost you for a moment, Sinan.
Where did you lose me?
For just a few seconds.
So I was talking about the courage and the moral certitude of the Ugandan judge, who's even more courageous than the Israeli judge. She was the only one who voted against all the articles. This highly admirable and courageous stance on the part of the esteemed judge from Uganda, Julia Sebontende, it seems came after some lobbying by the Israeli judge Aharon Barak and a private conversation the two had during the deliberations. A friend of mine who works at the ICJ sent me a transcript of the conversation that took place between the two judges in the last minutes before the vote took place. And the exchange ended up influencing the Ugandan judge's position. So I'm going to read the most relevant parts for our purposes here of the exchange between the two. It starts, Judge Aharon Barak starts, according to the transcript. So, Julia, are you going to vote the way we agreed? Julia answers, I'm still undecided. At this point, Barak says, Sunt cognati mihi. Now, when I read this, I thought Judge Barak was perhaps speaking Swahili to endear himself, but it doesn't sound like it. I had to look it up. Turns out it's Latin for, are you kidding me? So not only do these guys wear wigs, they speak Latin when they're stressed out or something. Thank God he switched back to English on the transcript. Said, Julia, what is undecided? That sounds so American. Why on earth would you vote against genocide and for a ceasefire? That is so cruel. I'm not Idi Amin, you know. We are tiny little helpless Israel. Listen, if you vote in favor of us, I'll get you a whole settlement in the West Bank, all just for yourself. You can even choose the location wherever you want. So Judge Julia answers, get out of here. What else? I want some action and excitement. I get bored rather easily. Judge Barak says, Israeli settlers have a lot of community activities, outdoors even. So Julia asks, such as? He says, for example, you can go out with them and torch olive trees or crops, destroy Palestinian homes and shops. You can displace entire families. There are opportunities for these activities almost every day of the week. It's good for your heart. It's good cardio. Judge Julia says, I don't know. It sounds a bit tiring. So Judge Barak comes back. Okay, we'll fly you to Israel. You can wear an IDF uniform and go into Gaza with our boys and kill as many Palestinians as you wish. You can film the whole thing and put it on your TikTok. So she says, but I don't have TikTok. He says, no worries. We'll get you an account. Hell, if you want, you can detonate a courthouse in Gaza. So Judge Julia says, that would be fun. But I've always wanted to sign my name on a bomb or a missile, like all these famous people who go to Israel do. I saw Mike Pence, Trump's ex-vice president, do that in Israel. I'd like to do that too. So Judge Barak says, sure, we can arrange that. Then she says, maybe I can start now with an electronic signature. He says, yes, why not? And then she says, what else can you offer me? So Judge Barak says, you can co-author with me. You can be co-author with me on my work in progress, A Humane Liberal Guide to Committing Genocide. That's where the transcript ended. And I think that says it all, why she took that really courageous and ethical position. So thank you, Bassam.
Thank you, Sinan. Thank you, Adel, for your incisive comments that finally set the record straight regarding ceasefire being genocide. Before I let you go, and before announcing our next teach-in next week, which is an emergency teach-in, which we can figure out usually a week in advance, under the title, Can Palestinians Be Traumatized?, which was scheduled for this week, but was moved to next week because there was another emergency that took its place. Before I end, I would like to ask you if you have any last words.
Thank you, Bassam.
Thank you all very much. See you next week on emergency teach-ins. You can find all our material online. Probably not. See you all next week.